My brother said I was a burden, and my parents, they just nodded. So I packed my car and drove. Guess who called 30 times when their perfect family vacation turned into a disaster? It's funny how some moments just etch themselves into your brain, you know? Like you can recall every tiny, painful detail even years later. For me, it was a random Tuesday night. We were having dinner, the usual forced family time, when my brother, Mark, just casually dropped it into the conversation like he was commenting on the weather. "You know, Liam," he said, chewing his food like he hadn't just detonated a bomb in the room, "you're kind of a burden on this family." I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. My parents, bless their oblivious hearts, didn't even seem to register it at first. My mom was busy fussing over Mark's plate, and my dad was, well, dad was just dad, lost in his own world. But then, slowly, like they were realizing they were supposed to back him up, they nodded. Just nodded. Like, yeah, Mark's got a point. No yelling, no drama, just quiet, soul-crushing agreement. Looking back, maybe I should have seen it coming. Mark and I were always oil and water. He was the golden child, athletic, popular, effortlessly charming. Me? I was different. Happier with a book than a baseball bat, more comfortable in my own company than at a crowded party. In their eyes, Mark could do no wrong, and I just existed. Politely, quietly, trying not to take up too much space. Growing up, it was always little things. Mark getting the bigger piece of cake, the newer bike, the better bedroom, which was arguably smaller but had a view of the street, apparently making it superior. I never complained, I was used to it. It was just the family dynamic. Mark was the son, and we all just revolved around him. But that night, at dinner, it wasn't about cake or bikes. It was about my worth or lack thereof in their eyes. A burger. The word hung in the air, heavy and cold. And the nods, those silent, echoing nods from the people who were supposed to be my pillars, my safety net, it was like the ground just opened up and swallowed me whole. That was it. That quiet nod was louder than any shouting match. In that moment, I knew. I didn't belong. Not really. So I did what any self-respecting, slightly dramatic but mostly hurt 22-year-old would do. I packed my car. It was a beat-up old Corolla, affectionately nicknamed the Rust Bucket, but it was mine. I'd saved up for it working part-time at the local diner all through high school. It represented freedom, escape. And right then, escape was exactly what I needed. I moved quickly, fueled by a strange mix of anger and heartbreak. Threw clothes into a duffel bag, grabbed my laptop, my books, my guitar, the essentials. Walked through the house, each room filled with silent judgment. The family photos on the mantelpiece seemed to mock me, frozen smiles in a world where I was clearly an outsider. Didn't even say goodbye. What was the point? To hear them agree again? To watch them shrug and say, okay, bye? No? Silence was better. It was cleaner. Just left. Slipped out the front door, tossed my bag in the back and started the engine. The rumble of the old car was the only sound that felt real in that surreal moment. As I drove away, I glanced back at the house in the rearview mirror. The lights were still on, casting a warm glow. Life inside probably went on as usual. Dinner dishes, TV, whatever normal families did. They probably didn't even notice until morning. And honestly, they probably didn't notice much even then. The first few months were rough. I landed in a small city a few states away, a place I'd picked almost at random off a map. Found a tiny, cramped apartment above a laundromat, got a job washing dishes at another diner. Apparently I was good at diner jobs. Money was tight, loneliness was a constant companion, and there were nights I ate ramen for dinner and cried myself to sleep. But slowly, things started to shift. I met people at work, other misfits and wanderers who became my makeshift family. We'd hang out after shifts, sharing stories and cheap beer, laughing until our stomachs hurt. I started writing again, something I'd always loved but had pushed aside, convinced it was impractical. Turns out, dishwashing leaves you with a lot of time to think about stories. I even started playing my guitar again, busking in the local park on weekends. It was terrifying at first, standing there with my beat-up guitar and trembling hands, but people actually stopped, listened. Some even threw money in my case. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough to feel like I was creating something, enough to feel seen. Life went on. I built a new one for myself, far away from the burden I apparently was. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot, but it was mine. I was making my own choices, defining my own worth. And in a weird way, being called a burden had been the catalyst for all of it. It had hurt like hell, but it had also freed me. I rarely talked to my family. There were a few strained texts from my mom, mostly guilt-tripping me about not calling. Mark, of course, never reached out. And my dad, well, Dad was still just Dad, orbiting his own star. I kept my responses short, polite, non-committal. Distance felt safer. Distance felt necessary. Then a few months after I left, it happened. My phone started buzzing nonstop one afternoon. Missed call, missed call, missed call. All from Mark. 30 missed calls in under an hour. 30. My heart pounded in my chest. What the hell was going on? I almost ignored it. Almost let it go to voicemail. But curiosity, that annoying little gremlin, got the better of me. I hesitantly called him back. He answered on the first ring, his voice tight with panic. Liam, thank God. You need to help us. Help you? With what? I asked, my voice flat, guarded. Old wounds I realized hadn't fully healed. They were just scarred over. It's the house, he stammered. And the animals. We're stuck. The house? The animals? I was completely lost. What are you talking about, Mark? Turns out my parents had decided to take a dream vacation to some fancy resort in the Caribbean. All-inclusive, white sand beaches, the whole 9 yards. The kind of trip they'd always talked about but never actually planned. Until now. And of course, golden child Mark was invited. Because family bonding. And who did they leave in charge of the house? And more importantly, the animals? Well, nobody. Technically. They just assumed it would all be fine. See, our family wasn't exactly a normal family when it came to pets. We had a collection. My mom, in her infinite wisdom, had decided over the years that our house was a sanctuary for unwanted creatures, which meant we had a menagerie of rescued animals. 3 dogs, all large and opinionated, 5 cats, ranging from fluffy Persians to grumpy alley cats, a parrot named Captain Squawk, who had a vocabulary that would make a sailor blush, and a whole elaborate setup of exotic fish tanks in the living room. Taking care of these animals was a production. It was a carefully orchestrated routine of feeding schedules, medication, tank cleaning, dog walking, cat litter scooping, and parrot wrangling. It was a full-time job. And for years, guess who had been doing it? Me. Because Mark was too busy with sports and social life. And my parents, well, they appreciated the animals, in theory, but the actual day-to-day care, not their thing. So it had fallen to me. I'd become the unofficial zookeeper of the family. And strangely, I didn't mind. I loved those animals. They were my responsibility, my companions, in a way, they were my family. The family that didn't call me a burden. But now, my parents were sipping cocktails on a beach. Mark was probably trying to impress some girl by the pool. And the animal kingdom back home was in chaos. The fish tank filter broke. Mark wailed into the phone. And Captain Squawk, I think he's sick. He's not talking. He's just sitting there all puffed up. And the dogs, God, Liam, the dogs are destroying the house. They chewed up the couch. And Mittens scratched Mom. She had to get a tetanus shot. He was hyperventilating at this point. Clearly, paradise wasn't all it was cracked up to be when your house was falling apart and your parrot was staging a silent protest. And Mom and Dad, they're freaking out, Mark continued, his voice cracking. They keep yelling at me, saying it's my fault, but I don't know what to do. Liam, you're the only one who knows how to handle all this. Please, you have to come back. Please, just for a few days, until we get back. I'll pay you. Anything. Just, please. Silence stretched between us. I stared out the window of my tiny apartment at the brick wall of the building next door. 30 missed calls. Chase. Desperate pleas. From the brother who had so casually dismissed me as a burden. From the family who had nodded in agreement. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. The irony was almost comical. They needed me now. The burden was suddenly their only hope. My first instinct was to say no. Absolutely not. Let them wallow in their self-inflicted petastrophe. Let them learn what it was like to actually be responsible for something for once. Let them suffer. But then, I thought about the animals. Captain Squawk, puffed up and silent. The dogs, confused and anxious, tearing up the house. Mittens, probably just scared and lashing out. They were innocent in all of this. They hadn't called me a burden. They just needed someone to care for them. And despite everything, despite the hurt, the resentment, the years of feeling like an outsider, I still cared. about those animals. Maybe deep down about my family too, in some twisted, dysfunctional way. Fine, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I'll come back. Mark practically sobbed with relief. Thank you, Liam. Thank you. I don't know what we would have done. Yeah, you don't, I muttered under my breath. But I didn't say it out loud. Instead, I laid out my conditions. But it's going to be on my terms. You want my help? You listen to me. No arguing, no complaining. I'm in charge. Got it? Got it? Anything. Just get here. I hung up, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, yes, and a hefty dose of I told you so satisfaction. But also a flicker of something else. A sense of purpose, maybe? A feeling of being needed. Not as a burden, but as someone who actually had value. Someone who was capable, competent, indispensable even. The drive back was surreal. It was like stepping back into a life I'd left behind, a life I thought I'd escaped. As I pulled up to the house, everything looked deceptively normal from the outside. But the moment I opened the front door, chaos erupted. The dogs greeted me with frantic barks and leaps, jumping all over me like I was their long-lost savior, which, in a way, I guess I was. Captain Squawk, indeed, was puffed up and silent in his cage, looking miserable. And the living room? Oh God, the living room. Couch cushions ripped open, feathers everywhere, fish tank water murky and overflowing. It looked like a furry, feathered, scaled apocalypse had hit the place. Mark and my parents were there, amidst the wreckage, looking utterly defeated. My mom's arm was bandaged, my dad was frantically Googling fish tank filter repair, and Mark was just pacing back and forth, muttering about vet bills and home insurance. They looked up when I walked in, their faces a mixture of relief and something else. Shame? Embarrassment? Maybe even a tiny hint of respect? Liam, my mom rushed forward, actually hugging me. It was weird. Oh, Liam, we're so glad you're here. We're so overwhelmed. Overwhelmed? I raised an eyebrow, surveying the disaster zone. Mom, the house looks like it's been attacked by a wild animal stampede. My dad sighed, running a hand through his hair. We just didn't realize how much you did, Liam. With the animals, with everything. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever heard from him. Mark just mumbled, "Yeah, sorry, man, I had no idea." I just nodded, a small, quiet nod of my own. Then I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. The next few days were intense. Non-stop animal care, house cleaning, filter fixing, parrot coaxing. Turns out Captain Squawk just had a feather stuck in his throat, drama queen. I worked from morning till night, fueled by coffee and a strange sense of purpose. And maybe, just maybe, a little bit of vindication. My parents and Mark, to their credit, actually tried to help. Clumsily, awkwardly, but they tried. They walked the dogs, cleaned the cat litter, even attempted to talk to Captain Squawk, which mostly resulted in them getting squawked at. They were out of their depth, completely and utterly lost without my routine, my knowledge, my burdenness. And slowly, as the house started to return to order, something else shifted too. The dynamic between us. They started asking me questions about the animals, about the house, about me. Not in a prying, guilt-tripping way, but with genuine curiosity. My mom actually asked me about my writing, about my music. My dad even asked about my job at the diner, genuinely interested in how I was making it work. Mark actually apologized. A real apology. Not just a mumbled sorry, but a heartfelt, almost tearful, "Liam, I was a jerk. I didn't appreciate you or anything you did, and I'm really, really sorry. I didn't say I told you so. I didn't need to." The evidence was all around us, in the relatively clean living room, in the purring cats, in the happily barking dogs, in the slightly less puffed up parrot. They saw it, they felt it, they understood. When their vacation was finally over and it was time for me to leave again, things were different, lighter, less strained. My mom hugged me again, a real hug, and this time there were tears in her eyes. My dad clapped me on the shoulder, a rare display of physical affection. And Mark actually offered to help me pack my car. "You know," he said as we were loading my guitar into the trunk, you're really good with the animals, Liam, and with everything. You're not a burden." I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in a long time, and I saw, not the golden child, not the arrogant older brother, but just Mark, my brother. Flawed, clueless, sometimes a jerk, but family. "I know," I said, a small smile playing on my lips. "I know I'm not. And as I drove away this time, the rearview mirror showed a different picture. Not a house bathed in a deceptive warm glow, but a family standing on the porch, waving goodbye. Not smiling, not exactly, but present, aware, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit changed. I drove back to my tiny apartment, to my dishwashing job, to my busking in the park. Life wasn't magically perfect. Loneliness still crept in sometimes. Ramen was still occasionally dinner. But something inside me had shifted. The scars were still there, but they didn't sting quite as much. The burden had been lifted. Not just from their shoulders, but from mine too. I wasn't defined by their narrow view of me anymore. I knew my worth. I knew my strengths. I knew I wasn't a burden. I was me. And that, I realized, was more than enough. And you know what? Captain Squawk actually started talking again a few weeks later. My mom texted me a video. He was perched on her shoulder, squawking away, clear as day. Liam's not a burden. Liam's not a burden. Maybe, just maybe, they were finally starting to listen. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough of a happy ending for now.